Today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers on the Varsity Podcast Network is brought to you by Varsity Search. Varsity Search builds great teams by connecting lawyers in Texas with career opportunities at small and boutique law firms. So if you're thinking of making a move or your law firm is looking to hire, please go to varsitysearch.com and book a time to visit right into my calendar. Varsity Search, building great teams. Hey everyone, Daniel Hare back with you on Lone Star Lawyers. Before we get started, I do want to let you know about a few of the opportunities that we are currently searching for. Some of these will sound familiar, a couple of new ones, a couple of subtractions. So in Dallas, we are looking for a construction litigator, a general commercial litigator, a corporate and M&A lawyer, as well as a trial law boutique, kind of all types of trial work, as well as a real estate and securities lawyer, private offering type lawyer there. In Austin, a family law attorney and a special education attorney. In Tarrant County and in Fort Worth, a family law attorney and then a corporate and real estate lawyer. In Houston, an insurance defense lawyer and then a trial boutique lawyer. And then lastly, in San Antonio, a probate and business litigation lawyer. So a bunch of opportunities there. Would love to hear from you if any of those sound interesting for you or maybe someone that you know. Obviously, if there's something else that you're looking for, I might know about that too, or we can certainly explore those opportunities that might be out there. So would love to hear from you either way. You can email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com. All right, today we are in Dallas, where our guest is Judge Marilea Lewis. Judge Lewis spent 25 years on the bench in Dallas, most of that time in the 330th District Court. She's currently a partner with the family law boutique Duffee Eitzen. She's a board-certified family lawyer and has been a Texas super lawyer every year since 2012, among a variety of other rankings and honors in lots of different categories. Too many to name here, for sure. She has a superb 10 rating by ABO and has attained 4-time recognition among D Magazine's Best Lawyers in Dallas. Judge Lewis is active with Executive Women of Dallas and a number of other community and philanthropic organizations, and she is also a certified yoga instructor. So a woman of many, many talents, that's for sure. All right, with that, let's hop into our conversation with Judge Marilea Lewis on today's Monday Mentors episode of Lone Star Lawyers. All right, we are joined by Judge Marilea Lewis. Judge Lewis, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show today.
You are most welcome. Delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, absolutely. And I was saying just before we hopped on how impressed I was with the level of technology and how great you sounded on the other end. I know our listeners are appreciating that right now. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. But let me clarify one thing before we get started. I am a retired judge, so there's no reason you really have to call me judge, but I appreciate it.
Well, as we know and have been well trained, right, that once a judge, always a judge. So I appreciate that. Well, first, and as you've alluded to, you have been you're a longtime judge. You're now in private practice. So tell us about your practice and your current firm and what you do now.
Well, I am a family law practitioner. I am board certified in family law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization and have been for 25 years. So I devote the majority of my practice to family law. My firm is Duffee Eitzen, LLP. I am a partner at this firm. We are a small boutique firm. There are 10 lawyers. We handle family law matters. Probably 95% of the caseload of everyone at the firm is going to be family law related in some form or fashion. We do have one attorney with the firm who practices school law, and it's a very specialized area, but it's also very helpful to have that type of practice in our practice because he often is able to answer questions about transfers and who gets to choose schools and what that really means and what that really looks like. So it's been very helpful to have George. And of course, I practice with my son, Hunter
Yeah.
Lewis, also a Baylor law graduate.
Yes.
And that's been great fun. So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
that's what we do. We litigate, we negotiate, we collaborate, and we mediate. So I mean, we do all sorts of things.
Do all the ATEs. Yes.
We do.
That's fantastic. And I was going to ask this anyway, but when you were just talking about your lawyer that does the school law piece, it reminded me that I'm sure over the past year and a half with what we've been going through in the pandemic and the school impact of that's been an interesting area with as part of the family law practice. What has been going on lately in the family law bar or with regards to family law in general in terms of are there any novel issues or changes or things that are going on that you're paying attention to that are impacting clients? What's the latest in the family law practice area?
Well, of course, what's been going on is people have been spending a great deal of time together, which in
Yes.
many instances has not been as good for relationships as it could have been.
Right.
Uh, but other than that, we're just waiting to see what the legislative changes are. I know that y- that you're aware probably of the new discovery rules that were put into
Yes.
effect, and that naturally impacts what we do. I mean, it impacts what everyone does, but in the family law arena, it really does impact us because we do have to get those 194 disclosures out pretty quickly and
Hmm.
documents to go with them, which for most people is kind of a challenge. I mean, for most people, we sometimes take 60 to 90 days to get them ready, even when there's a request for production on file. So having to do it within 30 days of an answer being filed is pretty amazing.
Yeah, a whole new world on that front for sure.
Mhm.
And as we're recording this, it's June 10th. The legislature, in its primary session, has concluded, but potentially, I'm sure we're still special sessions yet to come. It sounds like, right? And yeah,
Certainly sounded that way.
yeah. So we're not done, but maybe partially done. So we'll see what happens. You're in the Dallas area, Dallas County and surrounding counties. What is happening within the court system there in terms of hearings and trials, and what are we expecting from some of your former colleagues and judges on the bench, and how they're going to conduct things moving forward?
It's interesting that they have adapted so readily to Zoom. I think that in many instances, Zoom has been a big assist to the docketing system because rather than having 40 people sitting in the courtroom waiting for their case to be called, they can be sitting in their office working on other things, and the court can go ahead and call the docket and line up the cases and give everyone a specific time. Come back at 9:30. Come back at 9:45. I'll be done. How much time? So that has been really, really helpful. We are supposed to start in person hearings very soon.
Okay.
There is a possibility we'll be having in person jury trials as early as July.
Wow.
Naturally, the
Okay.
criminal courts are going to be prioritized in terms of
Sure.
Van Eierman simply because they have folks in jail and they are given priority, which in a court that's a general jurisdiction court, that means that the family law cases get kind of shuffled to the bottom.
Right.
But in Dallas County, particularly, and in Tarrant County, there are some in person hearings at this point, and we will be going forward. In fact, Denton County, June 1, went to all in person.
Okay.
So
I don't know if I knew that.
we've
So
seen some,
June 1, yeah, a week ago. Okay. Or a little
yeah,
week ago.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's been the biggest change so far.
Yeah, and as we've talked about for the last few months, you mentioned it. I think has been very interesting to watch how across the state the judicial branch, the judges have adapted so well to the technology and being able to keep as best they could the dockets moving forward. And I imagine that as we come out of this, that a lot of those processes will stay in place for a lot of hearings and things that maybe aren't obviously trials will go back to in person, but some of the other preliminary hearings and other things, I imagine a lot of them will stay by Zoom if all the parties are okay with that.
We have gotten some information from some of our judges in Dallas County that things like prove-ups and short motions will
Yeah,
continue to be by Zoom. That
yeah.
just kind of clears the courtroom and the courthouse and keeps everybody at a much more reasonable pace. So I have no difficulty with those decisions. I think that that's probably very wise, and I think that for a lot of people, that's going to work very well.
Yeah. I wonder what your thoughts are on and thinking through as you've gone through this over the last year, what you've learned about how to best utilize and adapt to this technology when it comes to some of these appearances and hearings and things like that. Obviously, we get trained up in how to do a hearing in person with a judge there, or if it's in trial with a jury there. But it's different when you're doing it on video and having to adapt to that. What have you taken away from the last year that you've learned and would apply moving forward as we do this?
The main thing I have learned in the last year is how to marshal my evidence and manage my time better.
Yeah.
That's one of the good things about it, because when you're on Zoom, you're not going to have unlimited time. Of course, you're not going to have unlimited time anyway, but you're not going to have unlimited time to just shuffle through. So getting the evidence, getting it onto the share screen, doing whatever needs to be done to get that before the court much more efficiently
Yeah.
is I would think the primary takeaway.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I want to transition and ask you to think back to your first few years of practice, just a little while ago, and ask you to think about what's something that you learned in those early years of practice that has stuck with you and is still an important part of how you practice law today.
Probably the one thing that really stuck with me was the need for preparation.
Hmm.
I see a lot of attorneys who are not quite as prepared as they could be.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand in many instances it's just a financial issue. Not everybody can afford to have everything they might want to have
Right.
done, but you still have to have a level of preparation going into the courtroom. You need to be sure that you have fleshed out the facts that your clients are providing to you. So I would think that would be the thing that has stuck with me in all areas of practice. You don't have to take 16 depositions. You don't have to send the maximum interrogatories and subpoena everybody in the world, but you do need to focus on your case to decide who the truly important
Hmm.
witnesses are, and then be prepared to use them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really, really good. So, if that's what you took away from the early days of being prepared, is there anything that you learned more recently that you wished, or maybe later on in practice, that you wish someone had taken you aside when you were getting started and told you that you had to wait a little longer than you'd have liked to learn?
There's a lot I've learned since going back into private practice, keeping in mind that I was on the bench for 24 years. So
Sure.
things have changed
Right.
markedly.
Yes.
I took the bench right at the period of time that we were identifying and attempting to control what they called Rambo litigation.
Oh, yeah.
Um, going back onto the bench, going back into private practice after leaving the bench, I have learned quite a bit. Things have changed somewhat, and the discovery rules are going to continue to evolve,
Yeah.
and the family code will continue to evolve, and people just need to be aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, So you've had the opportunity to work alongside young lawyers. You've had the opportunity, obviously, within your role as a judge, to observe and young lawyers. What's maybe one or two? What are one or two ways that young lawyers can impress you, that can help them stand out and demonstrate that they are on the right track, that they're getting it? What are some things that you see that you would encourage in young lawyers?
They need to be familiar with the current case law.
Yeah.
I mean, that's important. It goes back to the preparation. Coming in and arguing something that has been reversed or refined doesn't impress anybody. It might impress the client because they don't know any better, but in terms of opposing counsel or the judge, it's certainly not going to be impressive. So that would be one thing. Not making frivolous arguments. Young lawyers, many of the young lawyers that I have seen in the past, just argue things to death. You make your best argument and then you
Right.
stop. It's like if you have nothing to say, then sit down. It's just, you know what you're trying to know the point that you're trying to make it as best you can, but don't just keep arguing with either opposing counsel or with the court. For heaven's sakes, please avoid arguing with the court because, we used to laugh about it because everyone says, "Oh, well, with all due respect, Your Honor." Sure. What that actually comes across is, "You stupid judge, you don't know what you're talking about. Listen, here it is." And so, with all due respect, that would
Right.
be well and good, except for the fact that now you're going to argue with something the judge just said. So,
Right.
stop arguing. Make your points. Do the best you can, but don't just beat it to death. I can't tell you how many times young lawyers have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory
Oh
because
my
they just wouldn't
gosh.
stop arguing. You know,
Yes.
"Oh, well, gee, counsel, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but now that you bring that point up," I mean, just
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious. And at the same time so sad because yeah, like you said, like just snatching that victory from their defeat from the jaws of victory. Yeah, just like they had it or could have had it and instead they went down, the
Mhm.
argument rabbit trail and lost it. And
Right.
I'm sure there are people listening thinking, "Oh, I did that last month, and oh no!" But it's okay. You're gonna get better. You're gonna get better. You're in your 2, 3, 4 practice. You got a long ways to go to do this, right?
Right, and of course, the thing about it is what you want from a judge is, of course, to know the law, to listen when the law is presented, and to rule.
Mm-hmm.
Because once the court gives you a ruling, you as the attorney can then take whatever steps are necessary. And you if you lost, there are steps to take that may somewhat mitigate that loss, but you have a ruling. That's the important part. So,
Right.
arguing with the court and failing to provide accurate, updated case law or statutory authority to the judge is not going to put you in a good light.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Right. 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 Now that you've been back in private practice and also maybe reflecting on your early days before being a judge, what advice would you have for, again, kind of the young lawyers in the audience who are looking ahead in their career and thinking about how to build a business, maybe in family law or maybe in something else, obviously? I know sometimes young lawyers struggle with the idea of, business development, networking, that type of thing when, really they're focused on billing however many hours they possibly can, or just learning the craft still stage of kind of their career. How do you think young lawyers should think about their career from the standpoint of developing business, developing clients, networking, and kind of the relationship building piece?
I think the best, in my opinion, let me back up. The best way to build client base is by word of mouth,
Mm-hmm.
meaning you have satisfied clients who say, "Oh, I used so and so, and that attorney really did a good job for me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that isn't necessarily about winning or losing as much as it is about paying attention to detail, paying attention to the client, making sure you're managing the client's expectations, and making sure that you have given the client as much advice as possible about the outcome. Word of mouth goes a long way, and the way to build a word of mouth reputation is I hate to use the term, but it's true. It's networking. It's meeting more people. It's joining and being active in a variety of different organizations.
Yeah.
Uh, Starting a law practice, which I did many years ago. Another attorney and I decided that we would just go out on our own. It's difficult. You have to get out there. You don't have a whole lot of money to
Right.
run ads or do what you can do about getting your name up in front of the public.
Mm-hmm.
So the best way to do that is just use your time. Go
Right.
to organizations, reach out to people you know, introduce yourself. It's time consuming unless you already have something of an established clientele, which most young lawyers don't.
Yeah. And to go back to where you started with that topic, talking about developing your reputation through the way that you interact with and manage your clients that you have. I think that's really important and something that sometimes, um, young lawyers miss and don't think about is when they're doing good work for clients, they are doing business development.
Absolutely.
So it's not one or the
Absolutely.
other. They blend together, and it's not just 2,000 hours of billable time and then 200 hours of business development time. It doesn't work that way. It's not that clean, right? When they're doing great work for clients, that is business development. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that does create the reputation that they're going to need.
Yes.
Great. So when, a lot of what we talk about here too is kind of building off the last topic is on career and building career, and obviously moving from one firm to another and applying for positions is part of that a lot of times. And so when you're looking at hiring a new lawyer in your firm, what are some of the key things that you're wanting to see on a resume, in a cover letter? We'll get to maybe interviewing here in a minute, but to start with, kind of on those early documents, what jumps out to you on a resume or cover letter that makes you interested and makes you want to take the next step with somebody?
I would think a lot of it, I look for at least, is going to be people skills, people involvement. Are they comfortable around people? Have they been involved in church, school, clubs, athletics? Something that shows that they can get out and actually meet people and feel comfortable doing that. That would be what I would be looking for.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think also, it's nice to have the great academics and the Order of the Coif and law review and all of those things. But again, that's going to be a very small percentage of people.
Sure.
What I would like to see is someone who shows an interest in the area of practice and someone who is committed to learning as much about the area of practice that he or she will be practicing as possible. So if the resume says, I think I'd be a great patent lawyer, but you're applying for a job at a family law firm, that's really not going to do much for me. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time and I wish you the best of luck in the field of patent law, but
Sure.
not going to work for us. You know,
Yeah.
um, I have seen very well written introductory letters from attorneys, with 5 to 7 years experience, who say, for the past 5 years, I have practiced whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I have realized over the past several years that I prefer the practice of family law and I would
Yeah.
like to become more involved. So
How does that sit with you when you read that or when you see that?
I- it tells me that they've given it thought,
Yeah. Yeah.
that uh, they know enough to uh, have actually made a conscious decision to choose one area of practice over the other, and so that helps.
Mm-hmm.
I I'm always interested in people who are interested in family law
Yeah.
because it's not it's not one of those areas of practice that many lawyers want to practice. In
Right.
fact, I swore when I was in law school that I never would do it. I don't know if that's as much a reflection on the professor at the time or on my end goals, but be that as it may, I came into it somewhat not reluctantly, but the firm that I was with at the time when I got out of law school decided that I would be a good fit for family law. In fact, this this will tell you about the amount of time that I've been practicing. I interviewed with a firm, and the senior partner in the firm said to me, "Gosh, we really need you in the firm because we need to develop family law, and so I guess we really need a woman."
Oh, okay.
And I thought, well, one, I'm not applying for a family law position, and two, that makes no sense. I mean, you know, you don't you don't relegate family law to all
The
women.
one-
I mean, that's just, you're a woman, therefore you do family law.
Family law
That's
and
kind of
kindergarten teachers, is that what we're doing?
right. That's right. So
That
that
is funny.
that does take me back to that. But
Oh my
anyway,
gosh, yeah.
a lot of attorneys actively avoid family law, much like I actively avoid tax law. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things they never want to do.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mention that. I mean, I think in all the years that I was at the law school and career development, and even now being out for a couple of years, but I think that's right. Like, I think most people going to law school don't go into it thinking family law. I don't think that'd be the top of most lists. And then over time, people either fall into it or develop an interest in it. I think that's right. I think that's more of a common path than kind of going to law school for the purpose of doing family law. I maybe met one or two of those over the course of 8 years in working with law students. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Makes sense to me. So, okay. So if they've gotten past the resume stage, they've cleared that hurdle, and then you're in an interview setting with a candidate. What are a couple things that maybe make them stand out positively? What's maybe something that creates a problem or a red flag for you?
They're not on time.
Oh yeah,
They have an expectation of coming in and working 20 to 30 hours a week. And, you know, um, I don't
yeah,
want to work after 5, and I have to be home to walk my dog between 1 and 3. And, those kind of things are never going to make an impression on anybody.
right. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
um, but the biggest thing that you have to do is be ready, be prepared to answer questions, be prepared to say why you should be a candidate
yeah,
for consideration.
yeah. It's fun, and you've hit on preparation multiple times today, and I think that's kind
Mhm.
of a theme through each of the different venues that we've kind of been covering here is preparation, and so I think that is really key. And it's funny how oftentimes I think people feel like, I'm a lawyer, I'm smart, I've got this when it comes to an interview.
Yeah, right.
And I get a decent amount of resistance from candidates who, when I'm encouraging them to do a practice interview, I don't need to do it. Well, are you
Right.
sure? Yeah. How long's it been
Well,
since you last interviewed?
I took client counseling in law school.
Yeah,
Why should I interview?
right.
You know?
Exactly. So no, I think that's good. And, the other thing I want to ask you about, because this comes up sometimes, and I get it, but I also think you have to understand the dynamics and the timing of things. But, a lot of times people will say, oh, as the candidate, I'm interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me, and a sense of trying to find the right fit for both parties. And I think that's
True.
right to an extent, especially early on in the process, when the employer is the one with the job to offer. It's a little bit of a different dynamic than maybe later when the offer has been made and the candidate has the offer to consider. And so I wonder, have you run into any experiences with candidates where it does feel like they're kind of interviewing you and asking you questions about, why they should come to your firm, and how does that sound, or how can a candidate appropriately kind of live that out in an interview where they are trying to kind of find if it's the right fit for them without kind of sounding, presumptuous, I guess.
And I think that it's important, and I think that that is something that younger lawyers and applicants for any position are focusing on now, is trying to find that work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, eh, when I graduated from law school, everyone wanted a job, period. You know,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
we will sell our soul. Yes, 70 hours a week, no problem. You
Right.
know, now I think it's much more important for young lawyers to find the ability to do things other than just work all the time.
Yeah.
And I think the most effective way to do that when interviewing is just basically say, uh, ask about firm policies and uh, the ability to perhaps work remotely. Don't go in and ask about how many vacation days a year you get or what the PTO policy is, but just in kind of general terms, say things like, is there a firm policy about working remotely or virtually? Because a lot of people allow that now,
Oh,
even
sure.
and did before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, just kind of gently feel that out. And, are there expectations that I be in the office by 8:30 every morning and stay until 5:30? Or, what will be expected of me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And those answers will tell you a lot about what's going on in the firm.
Right. Right.
And it's
Yeah.
good to know. I mean, it makes everybody, um, it just makes life easier for everybody. That way, you don't get hired or the applicant doesn't get hired and then fails to live up to expectations, meaning they get to start the process all over again.
Yeah.
And not like, do they get to start the process all over again? But now they have a resume that says that they were hired and then, for whatever
Yes.
reason, didn't stay.
Yeah.
So, that's where we are
Yeah.
on
No,
that.
that's exactly right. I mean, yeah, I think that's what we want to avoid if we can. Is 2-3 months in, one or both parties decides it's not a great fit, and if it's an inexact science. Nothing's 100% guaranteed. But I mean, yeah, if we can get as many questions answered and be as transparent both ways before the person starts work there, that's going to be in the best interest of everyone, even if it means that we move on and we don't actually hire this person, or the person doesn't say yes because it's just not a great fit.
Mhm.
And that'd be much better to learn before day one than anytime after day one.
Correct. And there are some positions that people are going to accept with the expectation that they won't be there for an extended period of time.
Hmm.
For example, a lot of the people that I know that are criminal defense lawyers went to work for the DA's office
Yes.
anticipating that they were not going to make a career out of being a prosecutor. Some of them do, but not all of them do, but they wanted to get into that area of practice.
Hmm.
And 2 or 3 years in the DA's office got them an introduction to the courts and to the prosecutors and the criminal defense bar and to the way things ran. So it was actually a very good stepping stone and a
Yeah.
good strategy that wouldn't play as well, I think, on the civil side.
Right.
I don't think that anyone should accept a job thinking, I'm going to be here for 2 years and then I'll move on.
Right.
Uh, if unfortunately, for whatever reason, and in this climate, there may be a lot of reasons, uh, mergers, people
Hmm.
leaving, people retiring earlier than anticipated. There may be reasons that you don't stay a great deal of time at a firm. But just saying, "I'm only gonna do this as a stopgap measure," unfortunately becomes very apparent in the work product.
Mm. That's interesting. How do you see that play out in the work product?
Uh,
She,
it's
people
the
watching the
people
video
that
later
are
can see her face right now.
it's it's the people that leave every day, it's 5:30 and the door
Mm.
is shutting behind them as they are out the door. You know,
Right.
desk is clean, computers off, and
Yeah.
they're gone.
Right.
Um, it's the folks that don't really volunteer. You know,
Mm.
I've got a brief due. I need some research on this particular area of law. Does anybody have time to help? Crickets,
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Right.
They're marking time, and that's how it plays out in their work product.
Yes.
They aren't necessarily involved in making decisions and putting together a good representation for the client. They're just there so they can say, "Look, I was at such and such for 2 years," and then moved on.
Yeah.
I don't see that, and I don't mean this to sound the way it's going to sound. I don't see that being as much the case with people that go into government service,
Mhm.
because in any area of government service, there's going to be some political nature that is going to impact what you do.
Yeah.
So while there may have been the anticipation that you were going to go to work in this branch of the government and stay there forever, things change.
Yeah.
They are probably much more fluid
Right.
in their areas than in just the general uh, practice of law.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. Well, we are nearing the end of our time here. And before we finish up with our rapid fire questions, if there's anything that you would like to share that we haven't talked about yet, or something we didn't get a chance to dive into, this would be a good time to do that. So is there anything that, with all of your years on the bench and your years in practice, that you would want to leave these lawyers with? What would that be?
There is a fine line between projecting confidence and being arrogant.
Mm, yes.
Make sure you're on the side of the fine line that's projecting confidence and not arrogance. One of the smartest lawyers I know, with whom I graduated from law school, interviewed with the firm, and he said the interview was going great until they said something about, I don't know how they got to it. I think it was one of those, "And do you have any questions for us?" And
Yeah.
he said, "Sure. I know what I can do for you, but can you tell me what you can do for me?"
Oh, the ultimate I'm interviewing you
Right.
question.
And knowing this particular lawyer, I am confident it was meant to be glib and
Yes.
whatever. You can probably give better comments about this, Daniel, than I can. People interviewing young lawyers don't always have the same sense of humor.
Right.
So they didn't take it as, "Oh, ho, ho, that's
Yeah.
so funny."
Yeah.
It was kinda like, "Well, thank you so much for
Thank you
your
for your time.
time. Your resume is very impressive. We'll get back to you."
Yeah.
You know, fine line
Yes.
between projecting confidence and being arrogant. So just kind of keep that in mind. And I mean, ask your friends, "Am I arrogant?" Most of them will say yes. But I mean, listen to the ones that you truly believe in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's great, and we talk about that quite a bit actually. And it can, I don't know if you've seen this too. We used to see this a lot in out of on-campus interviewing back when I was at the law school, where the employers, the interviewers would sometimes come out and think or not a lot, some of the candidates were so meek, so reserved, they didn't display hardly any confidence at all. So they weren't even getting close to that line of the confidence area.
Mhm.
And so it's not that we want someone to be like that, because that can be detrimental in an interview situation too. But we do want them to display a confidence, as close as they can get to that. Yeah, but it's not crossing that arrogance line, right? Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. Because everybody has something to offer.
yeah,
You just need to focus on your strength and say, you know, I really like writing briefs. I really have a knack for research.
yeah.
You can say that without saying, "Oh, I've won 6 appellate arguments because my briefs were so awesome. In fact, the Court of Criminal Appeals will call me for decision, things like that. You just, uh,
Yeah.
there's a fine line.
Yes.
But you got, basically, you're selling yourself.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right. We have just a minute left here for our rapid fire questions. We'll get to those real quick. These are just one word or one phrase answers. And
Rorschach?
yeah, that's right. All right, here we go. Name one trait or characteristic that you most want to see in an associate.
Honesty.
Awesome. What habit has been key to your success?
Tenaciousness.
Cool.
Tenacity.
Tenacity, yeah. There you go. Favorite app or productivity tool?
Zoom.
Yeah, that's been a big one. What would you list first in the interest section of your resume?
Oh, my family, but my family would be my first interest. And then after that, it'd be dancing.
Dancing. Wow, that's awesome. I thought we were going to hear yoga instructing.
Well, I love yoga.
Yeah.
Love it,
Those are closely tied.
I love to dance. I mean,
That's awesome.
I'm one of those people, you've seen the bumper stickers that say dance like nobody's watching, or I'll only dance when I'm drunk. I don't have to be drunk, and I don't care if people watch or not. I love to dance. Period.
That is fantastic. All right, and last, your favorite legal movie?
Oh, goodness, there's so many, and it's so trite, but it's definitely To Kill a Mockingbird. Gregory Peck is just
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, that's such a good one. And that was our most recent. We do legal movie deep dive episodes here on the podcast, and that was our most recent episode that we did just last month. And it had been, I think, since high school English that I had seen it last. So to go back and watch it again was just like a flood of.
The amazing thing about To Kill a Mockingbird is that it's such a study in human behavior.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think it helps. I mean, you do have the legal aspect of it, but then you've also got the pure humanity.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Harper Lee captured in the book.
Yeah, I think that's right. In fact, I think a lot of the best legal movies really aren't about the legal proceedings themselves. They're more about something bigger than that. And it just happens to be kind of viewed through the lens of a lawsuit or a trial of some kind or something. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, look at any John Grisham novel.
Right. Awesome. Well, Judge Marilea Lewis, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Really, really appreciate it. Wish you and your firm all the best.
Well, Daniel, thank you for having me, and I'm always available for young lawyers with questions. Just give me a call or send me an email.
You heard it there, folks. She gave you the permission, so I'm going to put that in the show notes. Hope we don't flood her. I actually hope we do, and you have to tell some people no. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Daniel.
All right, my thanks again to Judge Lewis for joining us on the show today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you consider doing two things for me? Would you subscribe so you don't miss an episode? And would you rate and review the podcast in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen? And if you have suggestions or thoughts about the show, or if I could help you in any way, please email me, daniel@varsitysearch.com. Also, don't forget, if you're interested in any of the opportunities that I mentioned at the top of the show, or just want to visit about what else there might be out there for you, please get in touch with me. Would love to visit with you. All right, that's it for today's episode of Lone Star Lawyers. Thanks again so much to each of you for listening. I'm Daniel Hare with Varsity Search, and we'll talk with you next time.